welcome to a bonus episode here of Take Two Podcast. I'm Nate, that's Liam, and we are going to just take a look at some NFL free agency that's happened because there's been a lot. There's been a lot of free agency moves, signings, trades, blockbuster deals. So, thought we'd go ahead and take a look at them real quick. Liam, you got anything to say about the free agency as a whole?
My favorite time of the year, dude, because I don't this March to April is always my favorite time of the year, and there's a couple reasons why. One, I love free agency. I love tracking it. I love following it. Two, the NBA season is in full swing. It's after the All-Star break. Teams are ramping up for the playoffs. The MLB is about to start, and I've missed it so dearly.
Mm-hmm.
March Madness
Ooh,
we're about to experience here, and what, today is Wednesday, it starts tomorrow. So
crazy.
excited for that, and my birthday, all in
Oh,
this 2 month span. Favorite time of the year. I just
look at
love it.
that. You get a lot of presents. Um,
Well,
well,
not always, because I'm a Bears fan, so usually this time of year sucks because we find
oh,
some way to mess it up. But hey, maybe
hey,
not
it's
this
looking
year.
pretty good so far. It's looking
Hey,
pretty good.
we're doing some stuff. We're doing some
Ryan
stuff.
Poles is kind of cooking over
Chef
there.
Holes, baby.
All right. Well, let's go team by team here if there's anything notable we can talk about. The Bills started out by like cutting so many players on
Mm-hmm.
that team, so many cuts, especially on that defense. And so it's interesting to see how they have made up for it. I think Curtis Samuel was a great signing, probably one of their best.
It's it's a great bargain wide receiver two signing. I will say you were
That's
getting
true.
10 million a year is a little pricey,
Hmm.
but Curtis Samuel has been a very underrated receiver the past few years. Unfortunately, he has had quarterbacks such as Sam Howell, Sam Darnold, Teddy Bridgewater, Baker Mayfield. No, he was, but it's just
Hmm.
luckily he's finally getting a quarterback. I believe for the first time in his
Yeah,
career.
thank God.
I think, yeah. I mean, I think that played a big factor in his signing. But unfortunately, I think the Bills I think their championship window is closed.
Yeah,
Uh, and I think while they did make some quality, like Deion Dawkins was a good re-sign. He's a solid tackle. AJ Epinesa is an okay edge, probably better suited as a rotational, but I think it's looking like he's gonna be the starter. They just got worse. They just
that's true.
they made some okay signings, but I see the name at the bottom of the screen, and I think the Dolphins are now the best team in this division.
Hmm. I would
And
agree.
you could have made a case that they were last year, but they just, when it came to big games, it was tough sledding, sailing.
Yeah, that seems to be the thing with the Dolphins for the past few years is like, sure they have this roster, really good roster, really good stats in the regular season, but then the big games, even in the regular season, happen, and it just seems like a completely different team. Um,
They just they're in this tough medium where they look best. They look so much better than all the bad teams, but
mhm.
just they don't look anywhere near the top tier teams such as the Bills and the Chiefs. They look in like different leagues. They got to get out of that middle ground.
They
But
do.
Jordan Poyer,
Great
stealing
deal.
from division rival, going down south to Miami. I can only assume that's going to be a pretty cheap contract because he's a vet. He's older. He's injury prone. It's probably going to be a vet minimum around what
Hmm.
Russell Wilson got. That's a great value signing.
Oh yeah.
Um, I really like that for them. And then Nick Needham and Kendall Fuller. Kendall Fuller has been really one of the most underrated cornerbacks in the league the past few years.
Hmm.
He's a great replacement for Xavier Howard. Shaq Barrett, it's a good amount of money, but you needed depth at the edge, and you got that. You're beefing up your linebacker core with Walker and Brooks. You're adding to the line after losing maybe the best interior defensive lineman in the league. The only problem I have with their free agency has been The offensive line, which was their weak point from a year ago, has gotten worse.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't bring anybody in they lost Connor Williams and Robert Hunt, two of their best interior defensive linemen. And to replace them, they brought in Aaron Brewer, who is subpar at best. I imagine they're going to go guard in this draft or draft a center who can kick out to guard. And then they got Jack Driscoll, who is a backup offensive tackle. So that worries me a little bit because 2 years ago, we saw what no O-line did to Tua. We saw the kind of damage that did to him. I can only hope that does not happen again this year. I'm going to trust that they know what they're doing and give him. That interior defense, the interior offensive line just needs something.
Oh yeah. Yeah. A lot of names here. Obviously, they did a lot. Jonnu Smith is a good addition, especially when they lose Mike Gesicki.
I agree.
I agree with you with the Kendall Fuller signing. It's great because obviously they released Xavier Howard, but if you look at their DB room with Xavier Howard, Jalen Ramsey, Jordan Poyer, like that's a borderline retirement home of a secondary, and so that was a great signing. I agree with everything you said. The Patriots, I feel like I haven't actually like I'm not saying they haven't done anything, but I haven't heard. Oh, they've done a lot, it looks like, but I just haven't. It's not been as public.
A lot of re-signing. They brought back a
That's
lot of
true.
their own guys. Jalen Rager, for some reason, is coming back to Milan. I don't. Hunter Henry re-signing Austin Hooper. They so we're seeing now that Gerard Mayo values his tight ends just as much as
Bill
Belichick did, because Hooper and Henry are both starting caliber tight ends in this league. They lost Jonnu Smith and replace him with Austin Hooper. So and I, from my understanding, is that the two tight end set is going nowhere for the New England offense, and we'll be seeing that a lot. But the rebuild has started officially.
Good.
They brought back the young guys who have a lot of value that they can't really afford, or like not afford, but they really don't want to lose, such as Michael Winu and Josh Uche, both good re-signings. They're bringing back the young guys, letting the old guys walk, signing younger guys such as Rager and Osborne.
Yeah,
I just
it
the next few years.
Yeah, you're right. Like even though they're in a rebuild, they got Jacoby Brissett, Nathan Rook, but they're gonna with that unless they trade out somehow. I don't see it happening. I think they're definitely gonna go quarterback at that number 3 pick, and so and I do have to give it to Gerard Mayo, Antonio Gibson, bringing back Bourne and Rieger, KJ Osborne, who obviously I have a soft spot for, as well as these tight ends, a lot of the O line. He's doing a pretty good job, even though it's going to be a rebuild for a while, of giving whichever quarterback comes in a manageable situation, a decent situation, like not the best, but a decent one.
I will say there has been some debate among NFL executives and analysts as if they are of whether they are going quarterback at this spot or not. There's been a big split, and the split is either actually there's three. There's something that has been picking up more slack is that the Vikings actually trading up for this pick, which is absolutely their intent. That is absolutely their intent. They traded for another first round pick to use that to move into the top 5, top 10. Like we know that the Vikings are getting a quarterback. There's no doubt in my mind. The question is
Sam Darnold ain't
it. Which we have learned many times on many different teams.
Yeah.
The question is, who are they going to trade with? And my favorite, and like the mock drafts that I do for fun, because I'm a nerd. And the mock drafts that I do, my favorite team to have them trade up for or with is the New England Patriots, because the Patriots are in a spot where they did sign Brissett. They have a young, oh my God. Wow. What's his name? this is not cool.
Give
Mac
me.
Jones and what's the other quarterback
Oh,
on that
Bailey
team?
Zappi.
There we go. Oh my God, brain fart. Okay,
You're
obviously they know that neither of them are their guys for the future. But I also wouldn't be surprised to see them move back, grab more assets in the future, just and not discount this year at all. But they know that even with a rookie quarterback, this is not a playoff roster.
no,
At this point, we're just looking to the future.
absolutely. Last team with the Jets. Last team in the AFC East. The Jets. Some small things. Mike Williams being probably the headline.
Tyron Smith,
That's true. Tyron Smith helping Tyron Smith from the Cowboys. Mike Williams, obviously from the Chargers, helping hopefully for real Aaron Rodgers season. Hopefully for real this time.
I I will say this: Javon Kinlaw. I mean, this defense didn't really lose anybody.
Mhm.
So, I mean, other than Bryce Huff, who was not even the starter on this team, and they have so many young guys, Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald, who, again, Johnson, I believe, is a starter, but McDonald is not. Um, Javon Kinlaw, I like. That's a solid signing. But I will say, if because the two headliners have historically struggled to stay healthy. So this could be dangerous for the Jets. They could be just adding more injury prone players to this team, and especially to the offensive line in Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith. Which actually the Morgan Moses trade I really like. He's a pretty solid offensive tackle.
Mhm.
If Tyron Smith and Mike Williams stay healthy, that's a big if. I like this Jets team going into next year.
Mhm.
And I think we could be having a debate as soon as next year as whether the Jets or the Dolphins are among the top of the division. But
Ooh.
again,
Yeah.
it is the Jets. It is the Jets. So massive grain of salt.
Some special team love here. Greg Zuerlein, Thomas Morstead. Obviously, they both re-signed, but those are two really good players at their position. Okay, AFC North. We have got to talk about Derrick Henry and how the Ravens got this. How did they get King Henry, and how is that run game in the backfield going to be stopped next year?
It won't. I'm gonna be
That's the
completely
thing.
honest with you. It won't be. And if and the issue with this is that you see Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson in a backfield, every nerve in your body is going to tell you to stack the box.
Mhm.
Just expect run every time. But then you got to deal with Mark
Zay
Andrews and Zay
Flowers.
Flowers, and I'm glad my team's on the AFC. I will be honest, but I still don't expect any team other than the Chiefs to be making it out of the AFC next year. I will say
That's true.
before we move to the Bengals, re-signing Madubuike, who is is up there with Perkins among best interior defensive linemen. That might have been my favorite move for this team
Hmm.
because there was a lot of speculation that he was going to test the market and that because he could have gotten a massive payday, probably significantly more money than this from other teams. But I think that what we're seeing is that he knows he can win here.
Oh yeah.
So I'm excited for this Ravens team. I just
See if they
wish,
can get over the hump
yeah,
this year.
that is the Chiefs.
Yep. Cincinnati Bengals, franchise tag T. Higgins brought in Mike Gesicki, uh, brought in a little bit of O-line help, Von Bell. I mean, solid, yeah. Zach Moss to replace Mixon. I think that's a good deal. Good, I mean, good signing.
It's a good
'Cause-
value signing. Zach Moss is who really had the best year of his career last year, stepping in for Jonathan Taylor for $4.5 million over 2 years. That's a pretty good value signing, especially for a team that wants to focus their money, which they have a decent amount of, more than people realize, on the offensive line.
Mhm.
I don't love the Trent Brown signing, because it is most likely going to be for quite a bit of money. I would expect, and him and Orlando Brown are almost the exact same kind of tackle. They are big, they are long, but they are slow. So
Mhm.
I we'll have to see how that works out for them. Geno Stone, though, Iowa legend, I see at the bottom of that, who was in a backup role with the Ravens last year, will no doubt. So well, okay, we'll have to see. I imagine he'll get significantly more playing time, but nice little underrated free agency for them.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on to the Browns, of course, they got Jameis Winston and Tyler Huntley to add to that quarterback room of Deshaun and no longer Joe Flacco. Some running back depth. Obviously, the Nick Chubb was big shot. I love the Jerry Judy, and then they just re-signed a lot of the guys on the defense, added a couple assets. Yeah, I really like the Jerry Judy trade because here's the thing, like, yes, in his time in Denver, Jerry Judy, who was a high draft pick, picked above some receivers that are like among the top now. He was not, he didn't pan out as well as his draft stock would suggest. In Denver, I mean, and honestly, even though like yes, he's not the most like flashy, like talented, like overly talented in one area. I'm not saying he sucks. I'm just saying like even though he's not super duper flashy, make any quarterback look good, he did not have much help with quarterbacks. I mean, didn't he have like Drew Lock when he came in? Russell Wilson obviously struggled in that first year with that Nathaniel Hackett offense, and then this year, had a pretty mediocre year. Cortland Sutton really kind of just always kind of seemed like the guy there. I think this is a good trade because it gives him another shot to prove
My
himself.
my only issue with this, because they didn't give up a ton of draft capital, which so I can live with that. My issue with that is signing him to a 3-year extension before he plays a snap for you,
Oh, that was true.
because
That was weird.
because I will say they have done this before. And do you know who they did that for?
Wasn't it Deshaun?
It was Deshaun Watson.
That's right.
And
They gave him a
because of
bag.
yes, and because of that contract, which he's played average at best, but most of the time it's pretty subpar.
Hmm.
And because of that contract, they are very limited when it comes when it comes to money. And then starting this year, that cap hit is going to hit like a truck. And obviously,
Hmm.
there are ways to get around it, but it's not a great position to be in.
No, definitely not. But the Browns in the last couple of seasons, even with like a old Joe Flacco off the couch, especially with that defense, still found a way to like be relevant and also, you know, get a decent seed in the playoffs and look pretty good, honestly. And obviously this doesn't list any of the losses that a team had, and I can't think of many big losses that the Browns had on defense. Obviously they re-signed Zadarius Smith. They also had just like they had a lot of talent, some young on that defense, and so if that defense can carry again, and then the addition of Jerry Judy, some RB depth, and hopefully Deshaun gets his stuff together, they could be pretty good again. I could see, especially with like Amari Cooper still being there. Um, of course, Njoku still there. They still have weapons, and so it's really kind of just relying on can the defense do what they did last year again? And to help that case, can, you know, whether it's Deshaun, it's probably Deshaun, but if Deshaun gets hurt or really stinks again, one of these guys, Jameis probably, can they do their part? Because the Browns could be a decent team again, especially with Stefanski, who was
I will
coach of the
say
year.
though, I will say as long as Deshaun Watson is their starting quarterback, they will not be a contender.
I agree.
He is 28, 29, missed a lot of time the past few years due to various things.
Hmm.
So he's a lot of off the field concerns, which they obviously didn't care about. Because they signed Jameis Winston, who has also had quite a bit of off the field issues over the past few years, especially at Florida State. There was an
Yeah.
allegation of something that the
Uh-huh.
university and him had to settle out of court. Won't get into that, but obviously, character is not a prime factor they consider with some of their signings and
Yeah.
trades. But I just I don't see Deshaun Watson ever returning to what he
Texans
once
glory.
was with the Texans. Yeah. Which sucks, and I hope they figure something out because this is a generational defense, and I really hope they don't waste it.
Yep, I agree. Steelers. Obviously, the big two up front. Liam, you probably have a pretty big input on that first bullet point there. They got their quarterback of the now and likely their quarterback of the future. If and I like this. Like they signed Russell Wilson for a bag of chips, and then they got Justin Fields. But then, everyone was like immediately like, okay, who's starting? Like, what's the deal here? And immediately, Tomlin was like, oh, Russ is starting. That's it, no competition. And some people might be confused by that, but I think that
Well,
that's really good
there's a
because
reason for that,
there definitely is a reason for that.
and
Russ obviously just have had the better year last year, but also I see this as kind of also a mentoring move for Fields
I
for
just
like a season or two.
I think we've reached the point where we need to address the elephant in the room that Justin Fields is not a good quarterback.
He's a
If
flashy
you
quarterback.
if you want to make the argument for mid, we can have that conversation. But
Hmm.
and I'll say this, he is a hell of an athlete. He's a great athlete, but he's not a good quarterback. And
So sounds like a
that's
Bears fan recovering from a few years
well,
of
and you can label it however you want.
yeah.
I've had to watch this guy every single game for the last 3 years. So when I tell you that he might be the least accurate passer in the league that I've ever watched
Mm,
in the NFL football league, I truly mean that. He won us games with his legs and lost us games with his arm.
mm, mhm.
And the latter happened much more than the former, like almost like 3-1. So I just
Yeah.
and that's not going to change. Accuracy is not something that is just going to drastically improve. And you can blame a number of things, like
Hmm.
oh, his receivers didn't get separation. Well, I mean, his completion percentage was the exact same last year as was his entire career, and he had one of the better receivers in the league. Darnell Mooney is a great separator, and I will die on that hill. He just
Hmm.
hasn't. And when you go through film, he doesn't look off his first read. And this year, DJ Moore is his first read. So when that didn't work, he runs and he would run
Hmm.
into sacks. He would run into turnovers. He would run into inner like it just it.
Yeah,
I could go on and on about it, but my
you
point is,
could.
I could, and then I've done it in my mind. There's a
Oh
whole
yeah.
argument there in my mind, but Russell Wilson is the starter not only because he's a veteran, but because he is the better quarterback,
I would agree there
hands
too.
down.
And like I said, with mentoring, hopefully Russell can help Justin with some of that. Just pick up his accuracy a bit, also build some confidence back. Russell's only on a 1 year deal, and so it's not going to be like, okay, 1 year and then we're throwing Justin Fields into the fire. I Unless they make major noise, I can't see Russell Wilson coming back. He's up there in age, so retirement starts to become a question. And so, you're right. Russell Wilson is just the far better quarterback. But I do hope that, as as great of a coach as Mike Tomlin is, um, I hope I strongly believe that there is a little bit of faith that, in acquiring Justin Fields, they're gonna test him out to see, okay, can he learn? Can he, fit the system a little bit better? You know, and just have an experiment over the next couple of years. Obviously, the departure of Deontay Johnson, replaced by Van Jefferson. I mean, you could call that a wash. I call that a downgrade. But they still have Pickens, Freiermuth, Najee. Lots. They have some weapons on that offense, but we know the Steelers, and we know that they have defense, and some of these defensive signings are insane. Patrick Queen, Dante Jackson in a trade. Two very big ones, of course. A couple, a little bit of help in the secondary. And so I think that this defense, which is what kind of has carried them to a winning record for a few years now since Big Ben left, is just got better. I think just got better, and I think it's going to do exactly that for another year. Russ Wilson, far better than Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph or Mitch Trubisky. Might even gain them a couple more wins to like maybe a 10-win season. I don't know. The Steelers aren't contenders, but they're suited for another winning season, probably another playoff berth. Just because that stellar defense got better, Mike Tomlin just cannot seem to have a losing season, and the Russell Wilson is a huge upgrade at quarterback. So, I guess that's all we have really to say about the Steelers. Um, the Texans, man, the Texans went to work. This is a squad that seemed dead in the water like a couple years ago. And then a lot of people criticize CJ Stroud but D'Amico and everyone over there in Houston has turned this team into a legit contender because Joe Mixon bringing back Dalton Schultz and Noah Brown. And then on the defense, Daniil Hunter, my heart was hurt, but we were not gonna pay him what they paid him. At least I don't think. I know that the Vikings had a plan and it just didn't fit, but the Neil Hunter, Al Shahir, Mike Ford, Desmond King, Jeff Okuda, obviously bringing back Keamy Fairburn, and then Tommy Townsend, one of the best punters in the league. This squad just
Wow.
got stacked.
The only thing I'll say is that I wish they would have invested more or at all on the offensive line
That's true.
because again, lost them several games last year, including probably the Ravens game. There were a lot of things that went wrong in that game, but I think there were 6 or 7 penalties on the offensive line. They could not stop anything, a leaky faucet. So I imagine their plan is to address it in the draft. The only issue is that you're entrusting the protection of your franchise quarterback to unproven rookies. But the defense is starting to look really good. Daniil Hunter replacing Jonathan Grenard, probably as big of a upgrade as you were going to make over a player such as Jonathan Grenard, because he's turned into a very good pass rusher. But Daniil Hunter is elite. And he's what, 28, 29? For as far as I'm concerned, he will continue to be elite for
He's got
2
a couple
years.
more in him. Yep, he's definitely got a couple
At least one. At least one.
Because he arguably had his best season last season.
Yeah, and he did. I 100% agree that he had his best season. Great play for him in the contract year. Got himself a little bit of money for it.
A little bit of dough.
I'm hesitant to consider them a contender yet, but it's not out of the cards.
For sure. Colts, Joe Flacco,
Yeah.
one of the big ones. I mean, it's a good sign. I mean, it's decent value signing. But they're gonna start AR if he's healthy and if he can stay healthy. So this is honestly losing Minshew. This is definitely just a security blanket in the backup position and also probably a mentor for Anthony Richardson a little bit too in the quarterback room. So I like it for that. They didn't pay that much for him. He's just really old. And I'm there. I mean, in the games AR played, he looked pretty good. He just could not stay healthy last season at all. And then obviously where they were re-signed a lot of their defense, notably Isaiah Franklin, Kenny Moore, um, and so maybe not a lot of additions. Securing Michael Pittman for another 3 years is a good move because man, that guy's good at football. And so yeah, I mean nothing like huge to talk about. It's just they dealt their cards well. They didn't make a splash, but they also didn't tank and fall over. Still got Jonathan
I
Taylor.
they just didn't really bring in anybody.
That's the thing.
And I think their message is that we're happy with the guys we have. The only upgrades or new talent we intend on bringing is through the draft, which sometimes is not a bad
Mhm.
strategy. But it's just say that we like what we have, and you know what? I think they have one of the more underrated, better head coaches in the league, who
Shane
led them
Steichen.
who led them nearly to the playoffs with Gardner Minshew as his quarterback. So that's I
Tyler Goodson.
respect him dearly for that. And
Just
uh,
kidding. Yeah, I
um,
agree. They're in a good spot. Maybe not
they are.
contending, but
I
definitely not
but they
contending.
just I don't even think they're going to win their division because the
Oh no,
Texans have just
Texans.
last year it was kind of it was kind of a year. I mean, the Texans barely beat the Colts to win the division.
True.
Um, so I mean, they were very neck and neck last year, but the Colts kind of just stayed here, and the Texans just
Moved up.
not. I wouldn't say skyrocketed, but
They
they
moved
made
up.
some big, yeah, quite a bit. So
Oh yeah. And to speaking of this the AFC South division, which originally would be clowned on as one of the worst divisions, getting a little interesting. But one of those interesting teams from just last year in general, in terms of like the fall off they had just off of a cliff, is the Jaguars. I mean, they were like contending for the one seed in the AFC early on in the season, and then they just lost and lost and lost, and but next thing you know, they're out of the playoffs, and Trevor Lawrence looked kind of shaky in the back half of the season. He's still the starter. Mac Jones is not beating him out for the job. Um, they did get Gabe Davis, good addition, especially losing Calvin Ridley. Um, Devin Duvernay for some receiver depth, I guess. Ezra Cleveland, obviously they got him last season, extended him. I mean, he's a Viking, so he has a soft spot for me. I think he's a solid, maybe not elite, but solid guard. Mitch Morrison, an excellent center. What a really good center from the Bills. I think that's a great addition. And then obviously tagging Josh Allen, Eric Armstead is a good signing. Darnell Savage is a good signing. So they also kind of, maybe not to the degree of the Texans, but they moved up for sure in terms of
there's just
stuff they brought in.
several overpays,
That's
but
true.
if it
It'll be
works, it
interesting.
works.
Interesting to
We'll
see what
have
they
to
do
see.
down the line. Um, but they have a good squad. Hopefully they could just like not completely choke like they did last season because that the Jaguars look like a real scary team, and then boom, they're out of the playoffs. And so we're talking scary. We want to talk about a team that's not too scary at all. Is the Titans. Obviously, quarterback is like what is going on there. Um, Tannehill not there anymore. Will Levis is probably their guy. They're confident in that. They're going to build his skill set. Mason Rudolph is a good safety net, I guess. I mean, he's not like amazing, but he had a pretty good year with Pittsburgh last year. Tony Pollard, Calvin Ridley, two kind of older-ish guys who they definitely overpaid. They definitely overpaid Ridley. Um, Pollard had a very kind of underwhelming one. I mean, it wasn't like horrible, but like for the hype he was getting in terms of what he was able to do backing up Zeke. Um, brought back Westbrook Akini. I mean, yeah, that's good. That's wide receiver depth, but the wide receiver room of Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins, If you had said that like 5 years ago,
I was just thinking that. Yep.
this would have been one like the top unit in the league for sure, no doubt. Those are
No
two
longer as scary as it
no
once
longer as
might have been.
scary at all. um, I love seeing all of the betting memes all over about Calvin Ridley saying made so much and he's about to turn that into more off of his hitting his under on receiving yards. Um, so
Yeah, you know what
that's
they
pretty fun.
say. 99% of gamblers quit before they hit big. All right. Keep
Word.
going, playa.
Yes. Word. Uh, and then I mean they really just they lost Derrick Henry and the Awuzie signing is great. Nick Folk, a pretty good kicker. Some a little bit of overpays on older guys that might work, might not, but not for long. So honestly, the Titans are gonna probably they're gonna finish last in the AFC South. I don't think that's. I mean, I guess you can't say anything this early on, but the Colts are a decent roster. Jaguars are a decent roster that improved a bit. The Texans obviously made the big leap, and so they're not pacing. This is a team that was the one seed in the playoffs in the AFC just a few years ago, and now they're
Unbelievable.
like,
That team had no business being a one seed.
I know, it's crazy. And now obviously you have a different coach, and so it's just going to be interesting. This is probably the start of something new in Tennessee because they're going to probably take Will Levis, hope he keeps improving. Uh, I I don't know, man. I don't. They're spending a lot of money on old guy people. If they have to decide if they're rebuilding and soon because I think they need to, especially when you trade away Derrick Henry. All right, final AFC division. We'll take a small break and then come back. AFC West, the Broncos. Another team that just genuinely got worse.
And
Didn't,
and that was the plan.
yeah, and
They
obviously like that's not necessarily a horrible flaw, but
Broncos fans, get ready for this season. This will be not a good one.
mm,
I think that the organization has embraced it. That they tried the Russell Wilson experiment.
hmm
Um, Took up too much of their salary cap, spent too much money on them, put
hmm
too much towards that experiment and didn't work. And they're kind of in a tough spot because of it. Had to cut some pretty important veterans, such as Justin Simmons.
yeah.
So, I mean, the rebuild has officially started in Denver. Last year, they considered themselves like to be competing for the playoffs. Um, but that window is closed, and they're
Yeah.
looking to the future.
It is slammed shut,
It,
closed.
yeah, rude
They
awakening.
tried they tried the Wilson experiment. He wasn't helped by Hackett, but honestly, it just wasn't working that much. And here's the thing, they tried it that first year, it didn't work, and then they traded away their life and paid him so much that even with a pretty good season last year from Russell Wilson, Sean Payton comes in, who not the biggest fan of Peyton just as a person and stuff.
Rightfully.
And so Peyton comes in and he's like, even with like it's so weird because they tried the Wilson experiment to be good and get him over the hump in the playoffs because Drew Lock, Brett Rippon ain't doing it. And so they they bring in Wilson. He has a bad year with arguably a really bad system. They bring in Peyton and he has a good year, but the thing is that the Broncos find out we're paying this guy so much money, and it's not like cutting him fix that. They're still paying him 33 times as much as the Steelers are next year. But they come in and even though the way that they went about dealing with Russell Wilson was not at all very good in any ways, they basically said, you know what, no, this is just fail. We need to rebuild. We're cutting him, we're cutting Simmons, we're trading Judy, these guys that are gonna get, some money soon, and we're just like completely clean shot because it didn't work and it also set them back a couple of years with the money and picks they gave up. Holy crap. Chiefs. Man, the Chiefs are really gonna three-peat, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. It's
Marquise Brown is a great signing.
I mean they kept the championship roster almost entirely intact.
Oh yeah.
Uh, and brought back possibly the best defensive player in the NFL in Chris Brown for most likely the remainder of his career.
Oh yeah.
And then got the offense a pretty decent sized upgrade for a pretty dormant offense. And my understanding is that they're going to continue to add to that in the draft, most likely going receiver with that first round pick. And then if they get a guy like Xavier Worthy and you add him in with Rashee Rice, Marquise Brown, Travis
Ooh.
Kelsey, that's a pretty. I mean, and you put that in Patrick Mahomes' hands. That's a scary unit.
Oh yeah. If he could make last year's unit and the year before that unit work.
Scantling, Tony Hardman, a rookie Rice, and an inconsistent Travis Kelsey. If he could win the Super Bowl with them, then we are witnessing the next Patriots, my friend.
Yeah, and here's the things with the Chiefs. Like, you're right, they brought back a lot of the defense. Chris Jones, Nadi, Drew Tranquill, um, tagged L'Jarius Sneed. I the best notification I could receive on my phone is that the Vikings trade for Sneed, but I don't think that's all too likely, to be honest. But, you know, you're right, they brought the defense back. They gave Mahomes more receiving weapons that they're probably going to add to in the draft. They signed a really good punter in Matt Ariza. And I mean, he's had his obviously his years of
Scandal.
scandals and troubles, which I'm honestly it's like so in the past that I have not seen much news on that recently. He, for him to be reinstated in the NFL is probably a sign of um positives for Areza, but all I know is that when he was in college and when he went to the Bills, he was a really good punter. Person, I don't know. I can't speak on his personal
Ah,
because I don't have all I'm very uneducated in that field. Just gonna say that. But if you get rid of arguably one of the best punters, Tommy Townsend, and then replace it with a promising younger guy, I mean, the Chiefs got better and not even
unfortunately,
doing that much. Like they did, okay, they did. I'm saying like in quantity, they didn't do that much. And so it's kind of crazy to me that they're gonna they're gonna three-peat and Abdullah is never going to let us hear the end of it. Ever.
no, he will not.
It's Patriots over again, like you said.
It is. It is.
Raiders really, aside from some big ones like Christian Wilkins, great signing, lots of money. But
Forgetting Alexander Madison, my friend,
oh yep, how could I?
reviving his career in Las Vegas, as
Hmm.
so many do,
Right
such as
next to
Antonio
Amir Abdullah
Brown.
too. Yep. Gardner Minshew, I mean, I see the Raiders taking a Michael Penix in the second round or something
I
like that.
agree.
Or like a Bo Nix. I've also seen that in a lot of my mock drafts. Um, the Raiders picking Penix in the second round. So Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, plus like a Michael Penix. It's not horrible. You lost Josh
Unfortunately,
Jacobs though, but
unfortunately,
Zamir,
there's not a QB for everyone. So if it
that's
doesn't
true.
work, if it doesn't work out for them, I wouldn't be surprised if they go secondary or if they trade back, get more assets, like and just go as far as you can with what you have, because it's turning into a pretty decent roster outside of a few positions such as this. The secondary is still a little barren. You have pretty much nothing at running back now. Quarterback's a question mark. Interior offensive
Mm.
line, but I mean, I think Antonio Pierce is a good head coach, so he will make
Oh
them
yeah,
look better than they are,
that's
no matter
true.
who's at quarterback.
If he could take Aiden O'Connell and, you know, win some good games with that team. Maybe not in high scoring fashion, except for that 163-point game.
Yes.
I mean, are we seeing like a sort of a Steelers part two? Obviously, their defense is not really comparable to the Steelers, but they're finding ways to
Huh?
win games. I mean,
That
if their
defensive
defense is
line
good,
sure is. The
defense is good.
defensive line is
Wilkins, Max Crosby, power duo there, danger. Um, but like subpar offense, losing Josh Jacobs. I mean, Zamir White's really good, but you still have Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, um, and some just the quarterback's a big question mark, and so I do believe Pierce will figure it out. And then the final AFC team, that is the Los Angeles Chargers, who, man, did they explode everything, specifically on that offense, but also a little bit on that defense too. Herbert is probably not a happy man. Because no more Eckler, no more Keenan Allen, no more Mike Williams. Uh, I mean, you think in the draft they have to go receiver, whether it's tight end Brock Bowers or whether it's one of the top receivers in the class, because right right now that offense, which was honestly one of the only good parts of the Chargers team, is like empty. I mean, Gus Edwards is a great signing for his value. He's a pretty darn good running back in terms of pure running back. Uh Disley and Hayden Hurst, those are some decent receiving targets, but other than that, I mean, they lost Eric Kendricks, which I mean is getting up there in age, so I don't know how big of a loss that is, but
Kendricks and Murray are gone, replaced with Troy Dye and Denzel Perriman, which is a pretty decent sized downgrade.
yeah,
I think it's become clear that they are not planning on competing
yes,
what in this next season.
definitely not.
Mac and Bosa agreed to restructure the contracts, so they took pay cuts, but both of them have seen better years.
Oh,
Both
for
their
sure.
better years are far behind them. Bosa can't stay on the field, and Mac is a shell of what he once was. So
Yeah,
John Harbaugh's a great quarter. Jim Harbaugh's a great quarterback, head coach. He was
head
an
coach.
okay quarterback. He was an okay quarterback, but he's a good head coach. So I can see. I think their ceiling is a solid 7 wins. I'm going to be
Oh,
completely
yes,
honest.
definitely. They're not gonna make a lot of noise this year, but you know, maybe I think they're definitely starting uh, a rebuild of some kind. And
Maybe a
then
retool, but soft
yeah,
rebuild.
a retool, but I really see this as like, okay, Harbaugh's coming in, he wants to start building the team. He wants, and it's gonna take a little bit. You're gonna have to get rid of some of these bigger guys of the past. Um, but I'm very interested because I think Harbaugh can have success. He had some
I agree.
success in his first NFL stint, and so I think
He
he's
pretty, went to a
yeah,
Super Bowl.
oh yeah. And so I think he can do it again. I think the Chargers fans, all 10 of them, have to put their full faith in John Harbaugh and and just is Kellen Moore still there when Harbaugh got hired? I can't remember.
I do not believe Kellen Moore is
Okay.
there. I think he went to the Eagles. Let's see.
Okay.
Yep, he went to Philly.
Okay. So, but I have faith in Harbaugh. I think that this team could be better, but just you're right. They're not competing this year. They're not gonna make much noise at all. It's gonna be interesting. Obviously they're gonna want to re-sign Herbert after this year, but Herbert might not be insanely happy, or he might have a down year in his stats just because
I
of
mean,
this surrounding.
that's business, baby.
That is so. We'll have to see how he takes it. I like Herbert, both as quarterback and as a person, so I think he'll stick through it and have some better days. Because Herbert's really good. He's had some unfortunate situations. like the Brandon Staley experiment. So,
That's true.
all right. Well, we're going to hang it up here, take a break, and come back and do the NFC. But yep, that's our analysis and thoughts about the free agency for the AFC. And so we will be right back.